The smell of motor oil and old coffee hit me as I walked into Murphy's Auto Repair at 6:30 Monday morning. Another week, another set of broken engines waiting for my attention. I'd been fixing cars for 22 years, ever since I graduated high school and decided college wasn't for me. My wife Jennifer had different plans back then: marketing degree, corporate ladder, the whole ambitious package. Somehow, we made it work for 18 years of marriage. "Morning, Dave," called Eddie from under the hood of a rusted Chevy. "How was your weekend?" "Same as always," I replied, pulling on my work coveralls. "Jennifer visited her sick aunt on Sunday. I watched the game." That was our routine. Every Sunday for the past year and a half, Jennifer would kiss me goodbye after breakfast and drive 2 hours to visit her Aunt Alice, who was supposedly battling some mysterious illness that required weekly check-ins. Jennifer never talked much about these visits, and I never pressed. Marriage is built on trust, right? I should mention that Jennifer and I lived in Millbrook, one of those fading New England towns where everyone knows everyone else's business. Our house sat on Maple Street, a modest 2-story colonial that we'd been slowly renovating for the past decade. The neighbors were the usual mix of retirees and young families, with Mrs. Catherine Wilson next door serving as the unofficial neighborhood watch commander. My brother Tom lived across town in the trendy district, where old warehouses had been converted into expensive lofts. He worked as a financial advisor and never let anyone forget it. Tom was 3 years younger than me, but acted like he'd figured out life's secret formula. His wife Melissa was sweet enough, though she had a habit of bragging about their latest vacation or home improvement project. The thing about patterns is that they become invisible after a while. Jennifer's Sunday disappearances had become as routine as my morning coffee or Eddie's terrible jokes about carburetor problems. She'd leave around 9, return by 6, and spend the evening doing laundry or catching up on work emails. I'd ask how Alice was doing. She'd give me a brief update about the old woman's health struggles, and that would be that. "Dave, you got a call," Eddie shouted from across the garage. "Your wife wants you to pick up something for dinner." I wiped my hands on a rag and grabbed the phone. "Hey, what's up? Can you stop at the store and get ingredients for that pasta salad?" Jennifer's voice sounded distracted, probably multitasking between our conversation and whatever marketing campaign was consuming her attention that week. "Tom and Melissa are coming over Sunday after I get back from Alice's." "Sure thing. How's the Peterson account going?" "Nightmare. The client wants to change everything 3 days before launch. I'll probably be working late again tonight." Jennifer worked at Hartwell Marketing, a mid-sized agency that specialized in corporate branding. She'd climbed from junior associate to senior account manager over the past 8 years, and her salary had gradually surpassed mine. Not that I minded. Money was money, and we were comfortable enough. "No problem. I'll handle dinner prep." After hanging up, I returned to the engine I'd been diagnosing, a timing belt replacement on a Honda Civic, straightforward work that let my mind wander. Jennifer had been working late more often recently, sometimes not getting home until after 9. The marketing business was demanding, she explained, especially when dealing with difficult clients who couldn't make up their minds. Tuesday evening, Jennifer came home carrying takeout from that expensive Thai place downtown. She looked exhausted, her usually perfect hair slightly disheveled, and her makeup faded. "Rough day?" I asked, clearing space at the kitchen table. "The Peterson people want to completely rebrand. New logo, new colors, new everything. My boss is furious because we're supposed to launch Monday." She rubbed her temples. "I might have to work this weekend." "What about Alice?" "I'll still go Sunday. She's been feeling worse lately, and I can't miss a visit." Jennifer's dedication to her sick aunt was admirable, really. Most people would find excuses to avoid those long drives and depressing hospital visits, but Jennifer never wavered. Every Sunday, rain or shine, she made that 2-hour journey to spend the day with Alice. Wednesday brought unseasonably warm weather for October, and I decided to eat lunch outside behind the garage. Eddie joined me, unwrapping a sandwich that smelled like tuna and regret. You ever think about retiring? He asked between bites. I'm 44, Eddie. Little early for retirement. My cousin Jerry retired at 50, bought a boat, moved to Florida, spends his days fishing and drinking beer. Jerry also won the lottery. Details. Eddie grinned. But seriously, you and Jennifer ever talk about what comes next? Kids are grown and gone. House is almost paid off. Our daughter Katie had moved to California for college 3 years ago and stayed there after graduation. She worked for some tech startup in San Francisco and visited twice a year, usually Christmas and her birthday in July. The empty nest thing had been harder on Jennifer than me. She'd thrown herself into work with renewed intensity after Katie left. Jennifer's focused on her career right now. She's up for a promotion to creative director. That's good money. Yeah, it is. Thursday evening, Jennifer worked late again. I heated up leftover pizza and watched a baseball game, enjoying the quiet house. Around 9:30, I heard her car in the driveway, followed by the familiar sound of her heels clicking across the hardwood floor. How'd it go? I called from the living room. Better. We found a compromise on the logo design. She appeared in the doorway, looking more relaxed than she had all week. The client's still being difficult, but at least we have a direction now. Good. You hungry? I grabbed something at the office. She sat on the couch beside me, kicking off her shoes. What's the score? Red Sox are losing, as usual. We sat together watching the game, her head resting on my shoulder. These quiet moments had become more precious over the years, especially with Jennifer's increasingly demanding schedule. Marriage isn't always about grand gestures and passionate declarations. Sometimes it's just two people sharing comfortable silence while watching their team lose. Friday morning brought the kind of crisp autumn weather that made New England famous. The maple trees along Maple Street were showing off their colors, and Mrs. Wilson was already outside raking leaves that would be replaced by new ones within hours. Morning, Dave, she called as I walked to my truck. Tell Jennifer I found that recipe she wanted. Will do. Mrs. Wilson had lived next door for 15 years and maintained detailed knowledge of everyone's comings and goings. She meant well, but her enthusiasm for neighborhood gossip sometimes felt invasive. Jennifer tolerated her better than I did, probably because they shared an interest in cooking and gardening. The garage was busy Friday, with several customers wanting their cars serviced before weekend road trips. I spent most of the day replacing brake pads and rotating tires, honest work that paid the bills and kept my hands busy. Eddie handled the more complex engine repairs, while I focused on routine maintenance. Dave, your brother's here, Eddie announced around 3 o'clock. Tom walked into the garage wearing his usual uniform of expensive slacks and a button-down shirt that probably cost more than I made in a day. He looked around with barely concealed distaste, as if the smell of motor oil might permanently damage his professional image. Hey, Tom, what brings you to my humble establishment? Melissa's car is making a weird noise. Thought you might take a look. Sure thing. What kind of noise? Like a grinding sound when she turns left. I grabbed my keys. Let's go check it out. Melissa's car was parked outside, a 2-year-old BMW that still smelled new inside. I started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, immediately hearing the grinding noise Tom had described. Sounds like a wheel bearing, I said, pulling back into the garage. Nothing major, but you'll want to get it fixed soon. How much? For you? $200, parts and labor. Tom nodded, though I could see him calculating whether he should take the car to the BMW dealership instead. He had a habit of questioning my expertise, despite the fact that I'd been fixing cars since before he learned to drive. Can you do it Monday? Sure. Drop it off in the morning. After Tom left, I returned to the brake job I'd been working on earlier. The customer was picking it up at 5, which gave me just enough time to finish the installation and test drive the car around the block. Saturday morning, Jennifer announced she was going shopping for ingredients for Sunday's dinner. She'd planned an elaborate meal featuring some complicated chicken recipe she'd found online, complete with homemade sides and a dessert that required 3 different types of chocolate. "Need help?" I offered, though we both knew I was useless in the kitchen beyond basic sandwich construction. "I've got it. Why don't you work on that bathroom tile project?" The guest bathroom renovation had been dragging on for months, partly because I kept finding excuses to avoid it, and partly because Jennifer kept changing her mind about design elements. Currently, we were stuck on grout color selection, a decision that apparently required extensive research and consultation with multiple home improvement websites. I spent Saturday afternoon removing old tile adhesive and preparing the wall surface for new installation. The work was tedious but satisfying, requiring just enough concentration to keep my mind occupied without being overly challenging. Through the bathroom window, I could see Mrs. Wilson working in her garden, probably gathering intelligence for her next neighborhood surveillance report. Saturday evening, Jennifer and I watched a movie on the couch, sharing a bowl of popcorn and commenting on the predictable plot developments. She seemed more relaxed than usual, laughing at the cheesy dialogue and making sarcastic observations about the lead actor's questionable fashion choices. "This is nice," she said during a particularly ridiculous action sequence. "Yeah, it is. We should do this more often." Agreed. Sunday morning arrived with the usual routine. Jennifer woke up early, showered, and put on her visiting sick relative's outfit, comfortable jeans, a sweater, and sensible shoes. She packed a small bag with magazines and homemade cookies, the same ritual she'd performed every Sunday for the past 18 months. "Alice has been asking about you," she said, kissing me goodbye. "I told her you'd visit soon. Maybe next weekend. She'd like that. She always enjoyed your stories about the garage." I'd met Aunt Alice exactly twice in 18 years of marriage, both times at family gatherings where she'd seemed perfectly healthy and remarkably energetic for someone supposedly battling a mysterious chronic illness. But people's health can change quickly, especially as they get older, and Jennifer's weekly visits suggested Alice's condition was serious. After Jennifer left, I spent the morning working on the bathroom tile project, making decent progress on the wall preparation. Around noon, I took a break to grab lunch and check the football schedule. The Patriots were playing at 4, which gave me time to finish the tile work before settling in for the game. The afternoon passed quietly. I managed to install most of the new tiles, though the spacing wasn't quite as even as I'd hoped. Jennifer would probably notice the imperfections immediately and suggest starting over, but the overall effect looked decent enough for a guest bathroom that rarely saw use. Jennifer returned around 6:30, looking tired but satisfied with her visit. She carried a small container of what appeared to be homemade soup. "Alice made vegetable soup," she explained, setting the container in the refrigerator. "She's feeling a little better today, but still pretty weak." "That's good. About the feeling better part, I mean. She asked me to thank you for the flowers you sent last month." I nodded, though I couldn't remember sending any flowers. Jennifer had probably ordered them and put my name on the card, a thoughtful gesture that saved me from looking like an inconsiderate brother-in-law. Sunday dinner preparation began immediately. Jennifer had planned an ambitious menu that required precise timing and coordination between multiple dishes. I was assigned basic tasks like chopping vegetables and setting the table, jobs that were difficult to mess up even with my limited culinary skills. Tom and Melissa arrived at 7, bearing a bottle of expensive wine and their usual collection of stories about recent adventures and acquisitions. Tom had just returned from a business conference in Chicago, while Melissa had completed some kind of interior design certification course. "The conference was incredible," Tom said, opening the wine with practiced efficiency. "Met some major players in the investment world. Could be some big opportunities coming up." "That sounds exciting," Jennifer replied, stirring something that smelled amazing on the stove. "How's the marketing business?" Melissa asked. "Tom said you're up for a promotion." "Still waiting to hear. The creative director position would be a significant step up, but there's a lot of competition." Dinner conversation flowed easily, covering the usual topics of work, weather, and local gossip. Tom dominated much of the discussion with stories about his financial successes and predictions about market trends, while Melissa provided commentary on various home improvement projects and social events. "Oh, I saw Alice at the farmer's market yesterday," Tom mentioned casually while cutting his chicken. "She looked great. Hard to believe she's been so sick." The table went quiet. Jennifer's fork paused halfway to her mouth, her expression freezing for just a moment before recovering with practiced smoothness. "That's wonderful," she said carefully. "She must be having a good week." I said nothing, but something cold settled in my stomach. Alice at the farmer's market? Looking great? After 18 months of weekly visits to tend to her mysterious illness? "Yeah, she was buying honey and fresh bread," Tom continued, oblivious to the tension he'd created. Seemed pretty energetic for someone who's supposed to be bedridden. "Chronic illness has good days and bad days," Jennifer replied, her voice steady. "I'm glad she felt well enough to get out." I nodded and smiled, playing the role of the understanding husband while my mind raced through implications and possibilities. Maybe Alice really was recovering. Maybe Tom had mistaken someone else for Alice. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation for the apparent contradiction between Alice's supposed condition and her farmer's market appearance. Or maybe my wife had been lying to me every Sunday for 18 months. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of forced conversation and careful observation. I watched Jennifer's face for any signs of discomfort or deception, but she maintained her usual composure throughout the meal. Tom and Melissa seemed unaware of any tension, continuing their cheerful chatter about weekend plans and upcoming social events. After our guests left, Jennifer and I cleaned the kitchen in companionable silence. She washed dishes while I dried and put them away, a routine we'd perfected over years of shared domestic responsibilities. "Good dinner," I said, hanging up the dish towel. "Thanks. I think the chicken turned out well." Tom seemed to enjoy it. "He always does. Your brother has a good appetite." I almost asked about Alice and the farmer's market, but something held me back. Maybe it was cowardice, or maybe it was instinct, but I decided to keep my questions to myself for now. If Jennifer was hiding something, confronting her directly might only make her more careful about covering her tracks. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Jennifer slept peacefully beside me. Tom's casual comment about Alice echoed in my mind, raising questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. 18 months of Sunday visits to a sick aunt who apparently felt well enough to go shopping at the farmer's market. 18 months of long drives and emotional investment in someone who might not need the help. Or 18 months of lies about where Jennifer spent her Sundays. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. I'd spent most of the night running through possibilities and explanations, none of which felt satisfying. The smart thing would be to simply ask Jennifer about Tom's comment, but something deeper held me back, a growing suspicion that direct questions would only lead to more elaborate lies. Eddie was already working when I arrived at the garage, humming some country song while replacing spark plugs in an old Ford pickup. He looked up as I walked in, immediately reading something in my expression. "You look like someone stole your lunch money," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Rough night. Too much wine at dinner." "Jennifer's cooking will do that to you. My wife makes this casserole that could knock out a horse." I forced a laugh and got to work on the day's first job, an oil change that required minimal thought and maximum routine. Sometimes the best therapy was getting your hands dirty with simple, straightforward problems that had clear solutions. Around 10 o'clock, Tom called to confirm the appointment for Melissa's car repair. His voice sounded normal, friendly even, with no hint that he'd dropped a bombshell during dinner the night before. Either he was completely oblivious to the implications of his farmer's market story, or he was a better actor than I'd given him credit for. "Melissa will drop the car off around 8, he said. She's got a meeting downtown, so she'll need it back by Wednesday if possible. No problem. It's a simple repair. Great. Hey, thanks for dinner last night. Jennifer really outdid herself with that chicken recipe. She'll be glad to hear it. After hanging up, I found myself staring at the phone, wondering if I should call Jennifer and casually ask about Alice's health. But what would I say? Hey, honey, Tom mentioned seeing your supposedly sick aunt looking healthy at the farmer's market. Care to explain? That conversation would go nowhere good. Instead, I decided to do some research. If Alice really was sick, there might be medical appointments, prescription receipts, or other evidence of Jennifer's caretaking activities. If she was lying about the Sunday visits, that evidence wouldn't exist. Tuesday evening, while Jennifer worked late at the office, I conducted a careful search of our home office. I wasn't looking for smoking guns or dramatic revelations, just mundane evidence that would either confirm or contradict the story I'd been hearing for 18 months. The filing cabinet contained the usual collection of household documents: insurance policies, tax returns, utility bills, and medical records. Jennifer was meticulously organized, with separate folders for different categories of paperwork. I found our health insurance information, prescription receipts for Jennifer's allergy medication, and even veterinary records for the cat we'd owned until last year. What I didn't find was any evidence of Alice's medical care. No insurance claims, no prescription receipts, no hospital bills or doctor's appointments, nothing to suggest that Jennifer had been coordinating care for a sick relative or even staying in regular contact with medical professionals. Of course, Alice might have her own insurance and handle her own medical affairs. Jennifer's role could be purely supportive, providing company, running errands, offering emotional comfort during a difficult time. The absence of medical paperwork didn't prove anything definitive. But it was strange. Wednesday brought Melissa's car repair, a straightforward wheel-bearing replacement that took most of the morning. Melissa arrived promptly at 8, looking professionally polished in a dark business suit and carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Dave, you're a lifesaver," she said, handing over the keys. "Tom was worried we'd have to take it to the dealership and pay 3 times as much." "Happy to help. Should be ready by tomorrow afternoon." "Perfect. Oh, and thanks again for Sunday dinner. Jennifer's such an amazing cook. I don't know how she manages to work full-time and still put together meals like that. She's pretty organized. I admire that. Tom and I can barely coordinate our schedules enough to eat together twice a week." Melissa glanced at her watch. "Speaking of which, I need to run. Big presentation this morning." After she left, I got to work on the wheel-bearing replacement, a job that required concentration and precision. The work was therapeutic, providing a temporary distraction from the questions that had been nagging at me since Sunday night. Around noon, Eddie suggested we grab lunch at the diner across the street. The place was a local institution, serving the same basic menu of burgers, sandwiches, and coffee that had sustained blue-collar workers for decades. We found a booth in the back and ordered our usual meals. "You've been quiet lately," Eddie observed, stirring sugar into his coffee. "Everything okay at home?" "Just thinking about some things." "Jennifer things or general life things?" Eddie had worked for me for 8 years and had developed an uncanny ability to read my moods. He was also discreet enough to keep workplace conversations from spreading through the local gossip network, which made him a valuable confidant when I needed to talk through problems. "Probably nothing. Just some inconsistencies in a story I heard. Want to talk about it?" I considered the question while chewing a bite of my burger. Eddie was trustworthy, but discussing marital suspicions felt like crossing a line I wasn't ready to cross. If I was wrong about Jennifer, sharing my doubts would be a betrayal of her privacy. If I was right, talking about it would make the situation real in a way I wasn't prepared to handle. "Not yet. Still trying to figure out if there's actually a problem or if I'm just imagining things." "Fair enough. But if you need someone to listen, I'm here." "Thanks, Eddie. I appreciate it." That afternoon, I made a decision that felt both reasonable and slightly dishonest. I would verify Tom's story about seeing Alice at the farmer's market. If he was right about her being there, looking healthy and energetic, then I had grounds for asking Jennifer some direct questions about the apparent contradiction. The farmer's market operated every Saturday morning in the town square, featuring local vendors selling everything from fresh produce to handmade crafts. I'd been there occasionally over the years, usually dragged along by Jennifer when she was looking for specific ingredients or seasonal decorations. Saturday morning, I told Jennifer I was going to the hardware store to pick up supplies for the bathroom renovation. She was busy with household chores and barely looked up from the laundry she was folding. "Don't forget we need more grout," she said. "And maybe look at different color options. I'm still not sure about the beige." "Will do." The farmer's market was busier than I'd expected, with dozens of vendors set up under white tents and a steady stream of customers browsing the various offerings. I walked slowly through the rows, ostensibly looking at produce while actually scanning faces for any sign of Alice. I found her at a honey vendor's booth, examining small jars of different varieties while chatting animatedly with the seller. She looked exactly as I remembered from family gatherings, a woman in her early 70s with silver hair and bright eyes, wearing a colorful sweater and moving with the easy confidence of someone in good health. This was the woman Jennifer had been visiting every Sunday for 18 months because of her serious illness. The same woman who supposedly needed weekly check-ins and emotional support during her medical struggles. She looked about as sick as a marathon runner. I watched from a distance as Alice purchased 2 jars of honey and a loaf of fresh bread, just as Tom had described. She moved through the market with energy and purpose, stopping to chat with other vendors and examining their wares with obvious enjoyment. Whatever was wrong with Alice, it wasn't preventing her from living an active, independent life. The drive home gave me time to process what I'd seen and consider my options. I could confront Jennifer directly, demanding an explanation for the apparent contradiction between Alice's supposed illness and her obvious good health. I could continue investigating quietly, looking for more evidence before making any accusations. Or I could try to convince myself that chronic illness was unpredictable and that Alice might genuinely need Jennifer's support despite appearing healthy. But I knew I was past the point of self-deception. Jennifer had been lying to me about her Sunday activities for 18 months. The question now was what she'd actually been doing during those long absences, and why she'd chosen to construct such an elaborate cover story. That evening, Jennifer returned from her weekly visit to Alice with the usual report about the old woman's condition and spirits. She seemed tired but satisfied, carrying another container of homemade soup and a small bouquet of flowers that Alice had supposedly picked from her garden. "How's she feeling?" I asked, accepting the performance while cataloging every detail for future reference. "Better today. She had more energy than usual, and we were able to take a short walk around her neighborhood." "That's great news. The doctor thinks she's responding well to the new medication. She might not need as much help in the coming months." I nodded and smiled, playing the role of the caring brother-in-law while my mind raced through the implications of Jennifer's latest lie. Alice wasn't taking any new medication. She wasn't sick at all, which meant Jennifer's Sunday visits had nothing to do with family obligations or medical care. So, where had she been spending those 6 to 8 hours every week? Sunday morning brought the familiar routine with new significance. I watched Jennifer prepare for her weekly visit to Alice with the same attention a detective might pay to a suspect's alibi. Every detail mattered now: the clothes she chose, the items she packed, the time she left, and the route she claimed to be taking. "Alice is expecting me around 10, Jennifer said, checking her appearance in the hallway mirror. "She wants to show me some old photo albums she found in the attic." "Sounds nice. Tell her I said hello." "I will. Oh, and I might be a little late getting back. She's been feeling lonely lately, and I hate to cut the visits short." After Jennifer left, I gave her a 15-minute head start before implementing the plan I'd been developing all week. I'd purchased a small GPS tracking device online, the kind marketed to parents who wanted to monitor their teenage drivers. The device was magnetic and roughly the size of a matchbox, designed to attach discreetly to a vehicle's undercarriage. Installing the tracker took less than 5 minutes. I simply crawled under Jennifer's car, found a suitable metal surface near the rear axle, and pressed the device into place. The magnetic connection was strong enough to survive normal driving conditions, but weak enough that I could remove it later without leaving any evidence. The tracking device connected to an app on my phone, providing real-time location updates and a detailed history of the vehicle's movements. If Jennifer was really visiting Alice, the GPS would show a 2-hour drive to Alice's neighborhood, followed by several hours in the same location. If she was lying about her destination, the tracker would reveal the truth. I spent the rest of the morning working on the bathroom renovation, making steady progress on the tile installation while checking the tracking app every few minutes. Jennifer's car had indeed left Millbrook, but instead of heading toward Alice's town, it was traveling in the opposite direction, toward the trendy district where Tom and Melissa lived. By 11 o'clock, the GPS showed Jennifer's car parked on Riverside Drive, just 2 blocks from Tom's building. It stayed there for the next 6 hours. I set down my tile cutter and stared at the phone screen, watching the little blue dot that represented my wife's location. She wasn't visiting her sick aunt. She was spending her Sundays 2 miles from our house, in the neighborhood where my brother lived. The implications were obvious, but I forced myself to consider alternative explanations. Maybe Jennifer was meeting Tom and Melissa for some kind of family activity. Maybe they were working together on a surprise for someone's birthday or anniversary. Maybe there was a perfectly innocent reason why Jennifer would lie about visiting Alice while actually spending time with my brother. But even as I ran through these possibilities, I knew I was grasping at straws. Innocent activities didn't require elaborate cover stories. Family surprises didn't need 18 months of weekly meetings. Whatever Jennifer was doing on Riverside Drive, it wasn't something she wanted me to know about. I needed visual confirmation. 20 minutes later, I was driving through the trendy district with a camera and a sick feeling in my stomach. Riverside Drive was lined with converted warehouses and upscale shops, the kind of gentrified neighborhood that attracted young professionals and empty nesters with disposable income. Tom's building was a 4-story brick structure with large windows and a small parking lot in the back. I found Jennifer's car in that parking lot, parked next to Tom's BMW. I parked across the street and waited, camera ready, trying to prepare myself for whatever I might see. Part of me still hoped for an innocent explanation. Maybe Tom and Melissa were having marital problems and Jennifer was providing counseling, or maybe they were planning some elaborate family surprise that required absolute secrecy. But when the door to Tom's building opened at 4:30, those hopes evaporated completely. Jennifer emerged first, looking relaxed and happy in a way I hadn't seen in months. Her hair was slightly mussed, and she was wearing a different sweater than the one she'd left home in that morning. Tom followed a few seconds later, placing his hand on the small of her back as they walked toward the parking lot. They stopped beside Jennifer's car and talked quietly for several minutes, their body language intimate and familiar. Tom reached up to brush a strand of hair from Jennifer's face, and she leaned into the touch like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then they kissed, not a brotherly peck on the cheek, but a long, passionate embrace that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. I took pictures of everything. After Jennifer drove away, I sat in my car for another 10 minutes, processing what I'd witnessed and trying to decide what to do next. My wife of 18 years was having an affair with my brother. The Sunday visits to Alice were cover stories for weekly rendezvous at Tom's apartment. The elaborate lies about medical care and family obligations were just theater designed to hide their betrayal. The drive home passed in a blur of rage and disbelief. I'd suspected infidelity, but discovering that the other man was my own brother added layers of betrayal that I hadn't been prepared for. This wasn't just adultery, it was a violation of every family bond and personal loyalty I'd thought we shared. Jennifer arrived home around 6:30, carrying her usual props from the supposed visit with Alice. She seemed genuinely happy, humming softly as she put away her jacket and unpacked the container of soup that was supposedly Alice's latest offering. "How was your day?" she asked, kissing my cheek with lips that had been kissing my brother hours earlier. "Fine. Got some work done on the bathroom." "That's great." Alice was feeling much better today. We spent some time looking through old family photos, and she told me stories about your father when he was young. I nodded and smiled, marveling at the ease with which she constructed and delivered these lies. Jennifer had always been good at thinking on her feet. It was one of the skills that made her successful in marketing, but I'd never imagined she would use that talent to deceive me so completely. "She sends her love," Jennifer continued, warming up the soup that had probably come from a deli near Tom's apartment. "And she wants to know when you're planning to visit." "Maybe next weekend." "She'd love that. She always asks about the garage and your customers." That evening, we watched television together on the couch, Jennifer curled against my side while I struggled to process the disconnect between her apparent contentment and the devastating knowledge I now carried. She seemed genuinely affectionate, stroking my arm and commenting on the show we were watching as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The woman beside me had been living a double life for 18 months, constructing elaborate lies to hide an affair with my own brother. Every Sunday visit to Alice had been a betrayal. Every concerned update about the old woman's health had been a calculated deception. Every moment of apparent intimacy between us had been tainted by her ongoing infidelity. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day reviewing the evidence I'd gathered. The GPS tracking data showed a clear pattern of Sunday visits to Tom's neighborhood dating back several weeks. The photographs provided visual proof of their intimate relationship. The absence of any medical paperwork related to Alice's supposed illness supported the conclusion that the visits were fictional. I had enough evidence to confront them both, but I decided to wait. 18 months of deception deserved more than a simple confrontation. If Jennifer and Tom thought they were clever enough to maintain their secret affair while manipulating everyone around them, they were about to learn that underestimating people can have serious consequences. I began planning my revenge. The first step was gathering more comprehensive evidence. I needed documentation of their affair that would be impossible to deny or explain away. Phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts, restaurant bills, a complete picture of their deception that would leave no room for lies or excuses. Jennifer's phone was password protected, but I knew her well enough to guess the code after a few attempts. Her credit card statements were accessible through our joint online banking account. Tom's information would be harder to obtain, but I had some ideas about how to access his personal records. Tuesday evening, while Jennifer worked late at the office, I copied her text message history to a secure email account I'd created for this purpose. The messages between Jennifer and Tom were carefully worded, but clearly romantic, full of references to their Sunday meetings and expressions of affection that made me physically ill to read. One exchange from the previous weekend was particularly revealing. "Jennifer, can't wait for Sunday. I need to feel your arms around me." Tom, "Me too. I've been thinking about you all week." Jennifer, "Do you think he suspects anything?" Tom, "Dave? No way. He's completely clueless." Jennifer, "Sometimes I feel guilty about lying to him." Tom, "It's better this way. No one gets hurt if no one finds out." I printed copies of these messages and dozens of others, building a comprehensive record of their affair and their casual contempt for my intelligence. I arranged them chronologically, highlighting dates, times, and the easy familiarity in their language, the jokes, the nicknames, the careless references to moments they assumed I would never uncover. Each page felt like a small insult preserved in ink. They thought I was too stupid or too trusting to notice their deception, too distracted by work and routine to see what was unfolding right in front of me. They were about to discover how wrong they were. Wednesday brought more evidence gathering. I accessed Jennifer's credit card records and spent hours reviewing statements line by line, letting patterns emerge instead of jumping to conclusions. And the patterns were unmistakable. There was a steady rhythm to the charges. Restaurants, hotels, and specialty shops clustered tightly around Tom's neighborhood, always on Sundays, always for amounts that suggested two people rather than one. There were charges at lingerie stores I'd never heard of, expensive restaurants Jennifer had never suggested we try together, and a boutique hotel that advertised itself as a romantic getaway destination for couples seeking privacy and discretion. Each charge felt like another piece of a puzzle snapping into place. It wasn't just an affair. It was a routine, planned, funded, and repeated without hesitation. My wife had been using our joint credit card to finance her affair with my brother. Thursday evening, Jennifer announced that she might need to visit Alice twice the following week because the old woman was having a particularly difficult time with her treatment. She said it casually, over dinner, like it was an inconvenience she was reluctantly accepting. "The new medication is making her nauseous," Jennifer explained, her performance as convincing as ever. She shook her head slightly, the picture of concern. She could really use some extra support right now. "Of course, whatever she needs." My voice didn't waver. "You're so understanding. Alice always says how lucky I am to have such a supportive husband." She smiled at me in a way that once would have made me feel proud. I smiled and nodded, adding this latest lie to the growing collection of evidence that would soon destroy both their lives. Jennifer thought she was manipulating me with her fake concern for Alice's health, using my empathy as a shield. In reality, she was providing me with more ammunition for the confrontation I was planning, reinforcing the timeline and the intent behind every decision she'd made. Friday brought the final pieces of evidence I needed. I'd managed to access Tom's credit card records through a combination of social engineering and educated guessing about his passwords, habits I'd known since childhood. His spending pattern matched Jennifer's perfectly. Sunday charges at the same restaurants and hotels, sometimes within minutes of each other, purchases that clearly indicated a romantic relationship rather than coincidence. I also discovered that Tom had been paying for a storage unit across town, a monthly expense that had started around the same time as his affair with Jennifer. The storage facility's website showed that unit rentals were popular with people who needed discreet locations for personal items they couldn't keep at home. That detail alone told me everything I needed to know. Saturday morning, I told Jennifer I was going to spend the day at the garage catching up on paperwork. She barely looked up from her phone when I said it. Instead, I drove to the storage facility and used Tom's credit card information to convince the manager that I needed to retrieve something from my unit. I sounded annoyed, inconvenienced, exactly like someone dealing with forgotten personal property. The manager was helpful and trusting, providing me with the unit number and access code after I showed him identification that matched the name on the account. Tom's storage unit contained a collection of items that told the complete story of his affair with Jennifer. There were photographs of them together, laughing, relaxed, intimate in ways they'd never been in public. Gifts they'd exchanged sat neatly boxed. Hotel receipts from romantic weekends were stacked carefully, as if they mattered. There was even a journal where Tom had documented their relationship in embarrassing detail, complete with dates, emotions, and plans for a future that never should have existed. I photographed everything and returned the items to their original positions, leaving no trace of my visit. The lock clicked shut like a promise. Tom and Jennifer would never know that their secret hideaway had been compromised until it was too late to matter. That evening, I reviewed all the evidence I'd gathered over the past week. Text messages, credit card records, photographs, GPS tracking data, and personal items from the storage unit. Enough proof to destroy any attempt at denial or explanation. Jennifer and Tom had constructed an elaborate web of lies to hide their betrayal, but I now held every thread of that web in my hands, able to pull it apart at will. Sunday morning arrived with its familiar routine, but this time I was ready. I watched Jennifer prepare for another fake visit to Alice, knowing it would be her last. I noticed the details, the clothes she chose, the way she checked her reflection, the practiced ease of her deception. I smiled and kissed her goodbye, telling her to give Alice my regards while secretly planning the confrontation that would end both their deceptions forever. After Jennifer left, I made final preparations for what was coming next. I printed copies of all the evidence, organized it into a comprehensive presentation, and prepared for the most important performance of my life. Tom and Jennifer thought they were clever enough to maintain their secret affair indefinitely. They were about to learn that the supposedly clueless husband they'd been deceiving had been watching, listening, and planning his revenge. Sunday evening, Jennifer returned from her supposed visit to Alice with the same theatrical performance she'd been delivering for 18 months. She carried a container of soup and a small bouquet of flowers, her face arranged in an expression of gentle concern for her sick relative. "Alice was having a rough day," she reported, setting the props on the kitchen counter. "The new medication is really taking a toll on her energy levels." "I'm sorry to hear that." She perked up when I showed her the photos from Katie's graduation. "She's so proud of our daughter." I nodded sympathetically while calculating the timing for what came next. Tom and Melissa were coming for dinner Thursday evening, a weekly tradition that had taken on new significance now that I understood the true nature of Tom's relationship with my wife. 4 days would give me enough time to prepare the presentation that would destroy both their lives. Monday morning, I called a family meeting for Thursday dinner, inviting not just Tom and Melissa, but also Jennifer's parents and my mother. I told everyone I had something important to share, a surprise announcement that would be meaningful to the whole family. Jennifer seemed puzzled by the unusual guest list, but didn't question my explanation about wanting to bring everyone together for a special occasion. "Is everything okay?" she asked Tuesday morning while getting ready for work. "Everything's fine. I just thought it would be nice to have a big family dinner for once. Your mom seemed surprised when I talked to her yesterday. She said you sounded mysterious on the phone. I want it to be a surprise." Jennifer accepted this explanation with the same trusting nature that had allowed her to maintain her elaborate deception for so long. She had no reason to suspect that her supposedly clueless husband had discovered her affair and was planning to expose it in front of both families. Tuesday and Wednesday passed in careful preparation. I organized all the evidence into a digital presentation, complete with photographs, text messages, credit card records, and GPS tracking data. The presentation told the complete story of Jennifer and Tom's affair, from its beginning 18 months ago to the previous Sunday's rendezvous at his apartment. I also made arrangements with Eddie to handle the garage for the rest of the week, explaining that I had some personal matters to deal with that might require my full attention. Eddie didn't ask questions, but I could see the concern in his eyes as he agreed to manage things while I was away. Thursday morning, Jennifer left for work with no apparent awareness that this would be the last normal day of her life. She kissed me goodbye and reminded me to pick up wine for dinner, playing the role of the devoted wife while planning her next Sunday deception. "I'm looking forward to tonight," she said. "It's been too long since we had everyone together." It should be memorable. The guests arrived promptly at 6 o'clock. Jennifer's parents, Harold and Margaret, brought flowers and their usual collection of stories about retirement activities. My mother, Dorothy, arrived with a casserole and suspicious questions about the nature of my mysterious announcement. Tom and Melissa came last, Tom looking slightly uncomfortable in a way that suggested he was wondering if I'd somehow discovered his secret. Dinner conversation flowed normally for the first hour. Jennifer had prepared another elaborate meal, and everyone complimented her cooking while sharing updates about work, health, and local gossip. I played the role of the gracious host, making sure everyone had enough wine and encouraging the kind of relaxed family atmosphere that would make the coming revelation even more devastating. "So, what's this big announcement?" my mother asked as Jennifer served dessert. "You've had us all curious for days." "I wanted to wait until everyone was here," I said, standing up from the table. "What I have to share affects the whole family." I walked to the living room and returned with my laptop, setting it up on the dining room table where everyone could see the screen. Jennifer looked puzzled, but not alarmed. She still had no idea what was coming. 18 months ago, Jennifer started visiting her sick Aunt Alice every Sunday, I began, clicking to the first slide of my presentation. She's been very dedicated to these visits, never missing a week despite the long drive and the emotional difficulty of watching a loved one suffer. Jennifer smiled and nodded, probably thinking I was about to praise her devotion to family obligations. Tom shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but everyone else seemed relaxed and attentive. "The thing is," I continued, clicking to the next slide, "Alice isn't sick." The slide showed a photograph of Alice at the farmer's market, looking healthy and energetic as she examined jars of honey. A murmur went around the table as everyone processed this information. "I don't understand," Jennifer said, her voice carefully controlled. Neither did I at first, but then I started investigating where Jennifer actually spends her Sundays. I clicked to the next slide, which showed GPS tracking data displaying Jennifer's car parked on Riverside Drive. It turns out she's been visiting someone else entirely. Tom's face had gone pale, but he hadn't said anything yet. Jennifer was staring at the laptop screen with growing horror as she realized what was happening. "Jennifer has been having an affair," I announced, clicking to a slide showing the photograph I'd taken of her and Tom kissing in the parking lot. "With my brother." The dining room erupted in shocked exclamations and gasps of disbelief. Jennifer's mother dropped her fork, while my mother made a sound like she'd been punched in the stomach. Melissa stared at the screen in apparent confusion, as if she couldn't process what she was seeing. "This is insane," Tom said, finally finding his voice. "You can't seriously believe—" "I have 18 months of evidence," I interrupted, clicking through slides showing text messages, credit card records, and photographs from the storage unit. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, romantic messages, and even a journal where Tom documented their relationship in detail. Jennifer had gone completely white, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table. "Dave, please, let me explain." "Explain what? How you've been lying to me every week for a year and a half? How you've been using our joint credit card to finance your affair? How you and my brother have been laughing about how clueless I am?" I clicked to a slide showing their text message exchange about my supposed ignorance. The room fell silent as everyone read Tom's assessment that I was completely clueless, and Jennifer's casual dismissal of any guilt about lying to me. "This can't be happening," Melissa whispered, staring at her husband with growing understanding. "Tom, tell me this isn't real." Tom opened his mouth, but no words came out. The evidence was too comprehensive and too damning to deny or explain away. "Every Sunday for 18 months, I continued, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. Every lie about Alice's condition, every fake update about her medical treatment, every expression of concern for family obligations, all of it was theater designed to hide their betrayal. Jennifer's father, Harold, was staring at his daughter with an expression of profound disappointment. "Jennifer, how could you do this to your family?" "I never meant for it to happen," Jennifer said, tears streaming down her face. It started innocently, and then—" "Nothing about this was innocent," I said, clicking to another slide showing hotel receipts and romantic gifts. "This was a calculated deception that required planning, coordination, and 18 months of sustained lying to everyone in this room." Tom finally found his voice. "Dave, I know how this looks, but you have to understand. I understand perfectly. You're a selfish, lying snake who seduced his brother's wife and then laughed about how stupid I was for trusting both of you." Melissa stood up abruptly, her chair falling backward. I can't listen to any more of this. She looked at Tom with disgust. Don't come home tonight. Don't come home until you find somewhere else to live. She grabbed her purse and walked out, leaving Tom sitting at the table with his mouth hanging open. Melissa, wait, Tom called, but she was already gone. My mother was crying quietly, her casserole forgotten, as she processed the destruction of her family. Jennifer's parents sat in stunned silence, occasionally glancing at their daughter with expressions of bewilderment and shame. I think everyone should leave now, I said, closing the laptop. Jennifer and I have some things to discuss. The guests filed out slowly, nobody making eye contact or offering the usual pleasantries about dinner and hospitality. Jennifer's parents paused at the door, her mother reaching out as if to offer comfort before apparently thinking better of it. We'll talk tomorrow, Harold said quietly, and then they were gone. Tom was the last to leave, stopping at the door to make one final attempt at explanation or apology. Dave, I know you hate me right now, but I want you to know that I never meant for anyone to get hurt. I stared at him for a long moment. This brother who had shared my childhood and betrayed my trust, who had sat at my dinner table while conducting an affair with my wife. Get out of my house, I said quietly, and don't ever come back. After Tom left, Jennifer and I sat at the dining room table surrounded by the debris of our destroyed family dinner. She was still crying, occasionally attempting to speak before dissolving into fresh sobs. I felt strangely calm. The rage and betrayal I'd been carrying for weeks finally released through the evening's revelations. How long have you known? Jennifer asked eventually. Since Sunday night when Tom mentioned seeing Alice at the farmer's market. It took me a week to gather all the evidence. What happens now? I looked at this woman I'd been married to for 18 years, who had shared my bed and my life while conducting an elaborate deception that had fooled everyone who cared about her. Now you pack a bag and find somewhere else to stay. Tomorrow we call lawyers and start dividing up 18 years of marriage, and you get to explain to Katie why her parents are getting divorced and why Uncle Tom won't be part of family gatherings anymore. Jennifer nodded, accepting the consequences of her choices with the same resignation she'd shown when caught in her lies. I'm sorry, Dave. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I am truly sorry. So am I, Jennifer. So am I. She went upstairs to pack while I cleaned up the dinner dishes, a mundane task that felt surreal after the evening's dramatic revelations. By the time I finished in the kitchen, Jennifer had packed 2 suitcases and was standing by the front door. I'll stay at my parents' house for now, she said. We can work out the details through lawyers. After she left, I walked through our empty house, noting how different everything felt now that the truth was finally exposed. The photographs on the walls, the furniture we'd chosen together, the accumulated possessions of 18 years of marriage, all of it seemed like artifacts from someone else's life. I poured myself a drink and sat in the living room, processing the events of the evening and the destruction of 2 families. Tom's marriage was over, ended by his wife's disgust at his betrayal. Jennifer's relationship with her parents would never recover from the shame of her public exposure. My own family bonds had been severed by the revelation that my brother was willing to betray me in the most intimate way possible. But for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe freely. The lies and deception were finally over. The truth, however painful, was preferable to the elaborate fiction I'd been living. The phone rang around midnight, Tom calling to make another attempt at explanation or apology. I let it go to voicemail and went to bed, sleeping better than I had in weeks. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, division of assets, and the practical details of ending an 18-year marriage. There would be gossip, judgment, and the social complications of divorce in a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. But tonight, the truth was finally out, and that was enough. The next morning brought a series of phone calls that confirmed the complete destruction of both families. Melissa called first, her voice shaky but determined as she explained that she'd filed for divorce and obtained a restraining order against Tom. He'd spent the night in a hotel and would be served with papers before the end of the day. "I can't believe I was so blind," she said. "Looking back, there were so many signs I should have noticed. We see what we want to see," I replied, "and we trust the people we love. I'm sorry this happened to you, Dave. You didn't deserve any of this." Jennifer's parents called next, Harold's voice heavy with embarrassment and disappointment. They'd spent the night talking about their daughter's behavior and had decided to limit contact until she could provide a satisfactory explanation for her actions. "We raised her better than this," Harold said. "I don't understand how she could betray your trust so completely." "Neither do I." My mother's call was the most difficult. She'd been crying since leaving the house the night before, struggling to process the revelation that one of her sons had betrayed the other in such a fundamental way. "I keep thinking about when you boys were little," she said through tears. "You were so close, always looking out for each other. How did it come to this?" "I don't know, Mom. I really don't know." By noon, the story had spread through Millbrook's gossip network with the efficiency of a social media algorithm. Mrs. Wilson appeared at my door with a casserole and an expression of sympathetic curiosity, clearly hoping for additional details about the family drama that had everyone talking. "I always thought Jennifer seemed distracted lately," she said, setting the casserole on my kitchen counter. "And Tom's been coming around the neighborhood more often than usual." "Has he?" "Oh, yes. I've seen his car parked on different streets, like he was trying not to be noticed. I thought maybe he was having financial troubles and didn't want people to know he was visiting so often." I thanked Mrs. Wilson for the casserole and the information, adding her observations to the growing pile of evidence that Tom and Jennifer's affair had been an open secret that only I had been too trusting to notice. Eddie called around 2 o'clock to check on me and offer whatever support I needed. "Take all the time you need," he said. "I can handle the garage for as long as necessary." "Thanks, Eddie. I appreciate everything you've done." "You sure you're okay? This kind of betrayal can really mess with your head." "I'm angry, but I'm not broken. If anything, I feel relieved that the lies are finally over. That's healthy. Some guys would be talking about revenge or making threats." The truth was revenge enough. Tom lost his marriage, his family relationships, and his reputation. Jennifer lost the same things. They destroyed their own lives more effectively than I ever could have. That afternoon, I met with a divorce attorney recommended by Eddie's wife. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Hayes, reviewed the evidence I'd gathered and assured me that Jennifer's adultery would work in my favor during asset division proceedings. "This is one of the most comprehensive documentation packages I've ever seen," she said, flipping through the photographs and financial records. "Your wife won't be able to claim any kind of victim status or argue for special consideration. I just want it to be over quickly and fairly. Given this evidence, I think we can arrange that. She'll probably accept whatever terms we propose, rather than risk having all of this presented in open court." Friday brought a call from Jennifer, who had apparently spent 2 days at her parents' house being lectured about responsibility, commitment, and family loyalty. She sounded exhausted and defeated, nothing like the confident woman who had been constructing elaborate lies just a week earlier. "Dave, I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I need to ask you something." "What?" "Are you planning to tell Katie about this? She's been calling, asking why I'm staying at my parents' house and why Tom and Melissa are getting divorced." I'd been dreading this conversation. Katie was 21 and living her own life in California, but she deserved to know why her family was falling apart. The question was how much detail to provide and how to frame the situation in a way that wouldn't completely destroy her relationship with her mother. "She's going to find out eventually. Small towns don't keep secrets." "I know, I don't want her to hate me." "Then you should have thought about that before you started the affair." Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. Will you let me tell her, in my own way? You have until Sunday. After that, I'm going to tell her the truth. Saturday morning, I drove to the storage facility and used Tom's access information one final time to clean out the unit completely. I loaded everything into my truck, photographs, gifts, hotel receipts, and Tom's pathetic journal, and drove to the town dump, where I threw it all into the industrial incinerator. Watching those artifacts of betrayal burn felt like a cleansing ritual, removing the last physical evidence of Tom and Jennifer's deception from the world. The legal evidence was safely stored in multiple locations, but the sentimental remnants of their affair were now ash and smoke. Sunday arrived without Jennifer's usual departure for her fake visit to Alice. Instead, she called around noon to tell me she'd spoken with Katie and explained the situation as honestly as she could manage. How did she take it? I asked. About as well as you'd expect. She's disappointed and angry, but she said she still loves both of us. That's something, I guess. Dave, I know this doesn't change anything, but I want you to know that I never stopped loving you. The affair was about something else entirely. Loneliness, excitement, the feeling of being desired. It wasn't about you not being enough. It doesn't matter why you did it, Jennifer. What matters is that you chose to lie to me for 18 months instead of talking about whatever problems we were having. I know. I made terrible choices, and I'll have to live with the consequences for the rest of my life. After hanging up, I spent the afternoon cleaning out Jennifer's belongings from our bedroom and bathroom, packing everything into boxes that I stacked in the garage. The physical act of removing her presence from our shared spaces felt therapeutic, like reclaiming territory that had been contaminated by deception. Monday brought the first official divorce paperwork, delivered by a process server who seemed apologetic about the nature of his job. Jennifer had apparently decided not to contest any of my terms, accepting the asset division and custody arrangements without argument. She must really want this to be over quickly, Patricia Hayes observed when I called to report the development. Most people fight harder for their share of marital assets. She knows she has no leverage. Fighting would just mean more public exposure of the affair. That works in our favor. We should be able to finalize everything within 60 days. Tuesday brought an unexpected visitor. Tom, looking haggard and desperate as he stood on my front porch, holding what appeared to be a prepared speech. I know you don't want to see me, he began, but I need to try to explain what happened. There's nothing to explain. You had an affair with my wife. End of story. It wasn't supposed to happen. Jennifer was lonely, and I was having problems with Melissa, and we started talking about our marriages. One thing led to another, and before you knew it, you were renting a storage unit to hide evidence of your affair and laughing about how clueless I was. Tom winced at the reminder of his own words. I never meant to hurt you, Dave. You're my brother. Brothers don't do what you did. Brothers protect each other. They don't betray each other for 18 months while sitting at each other's dinner tables. I know I messed up. I know I destroyed everything. But we're still family. I looked at this man who shared my childhood and my parents, who had been my best man at my wedding and the godfather to my daughter. The betrayal had been so complete and so calculated that I couldn't find any remaining affection or forgiveness in my heart. No, Tom. We're not family anymore. Family requires trust and loyalty, and you destroyed both of those things. Don't come here again. I closed the door and watched through the window as Tom stood on my porch for several minutes, apparently hoping I would change my mind and invite him in for the kind of heart-to-heart conversation that might lead to reconciliation. But some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive, and some relationships are too damaged to repair. Tom had made his choices, and now he would live with the consequences. Wednesday brought news that Tom had been forced to resign from his financial advisory position after his employer learned about the affair and decided it reflected poorly on the company's family values image. Melissa had also been awarded temporary custody of their children, with Tom limited to supervised visitation until the divorce was finalized. "He's lost everything," my mother reported during her daily check-in call. "His job, his marriage, his children, his reputation. I almost feel sorry for him. He made his choices. I know, but he's still my son, and it breaks my heart to see him suffering. What about me, Mom? I'm your son too, and I'm the one who was betrayed. You're right. I'm sorry. I never thought I'd see my family destroyed like this." Thursday evening, I had dinner alone for the first time since the revelation, eating a simple meal while reading a book and enjoying the quiet of my empty house. I noticed small details I'd ignored for years: the steady ticking of the kitchen clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the way the light shifted across the table as the sun went down. The silence that had once felt lonely now felt peaceful, free from the underlying tension of living with someone who was maintaining such an elaborate deception. There was no need to monitor my tone, no sense that a careless word might trigger defensiveness or lies. For the first time in a long while, the house felt honest. Friday brought a call from Katie, who had apparently spent the week processing the news about her parents' divorce and her uncle's betrayal. I could hear how carefully she'd chosen her words, like someone stepping across unstable ground. "Dad, I just want you to know that I don't blame you for any of this," she said. "Mom made her own choices, and she'll have to live with them." "Your mother is still your mother, Katie. Don't let this destroy your relationship with her." I meant it, even if I knew reconciliation might not be possible anytime soon. I'm not sure I can forgive her for lying to everyone for so long. And Uncle Tom, I don't think I ever want to see him again. Her voice tightened on his name. "That's your decision to make. Just don't make it in anger. Give yourself time to process everything before you decide how you want to handle family relationships going forward." I wanted her choices to be deliberate, not reactions fueled by shock. "Are you okay, Dad? Really okay?" "I'm better than I expected to be. The truth is easier to live with than the lies were." Saying it out loud made it feel more real. Saturday morning, I returned to work at the garage for the first time since the revelation. The familiar smell of oil and metal grounded me immediately. Eddie and the other mechanics were supportive but respectful of my privacy, asking how I was doing without pressing for details about the divorce proceedings or family drama. "Good to have you back," Eddie said as we worked on a brake replacement together. "Place wasn't the same without you." "Good to be back. Turns out that working with your hands is excellent therapy for dealing with betrayal." I tightened a bolt and felt the satisfying resistance. Physical work clears the head, gives you something productive to focus on while your brain processes the emotional stuff. He was right. Each task had a beginning, a middle, and a clear end, something my personal life had lacked for too long. That afternoon, Mrs. Wilson appeared with another casserole and an update on the neighborhood gossip situation. "People are starting to move on to other topics," she reported. "The Hendersons are getting divorced too, and there's some drama with the new family that moved into the blue house on Oak Street. That's probably for the best." I was grateful to no longer be the main attraction. Jennifer's parents put their house up for sale. Harold told my husband they can't stand the shame of having everyone know what their daughter did. I felt a pang of sympathy for Harold and Margaret, who had been collateral damage in their daughter's deception. They'd raised Jennifer to be better than this, and her choices had reflected poorly on their parenting and family values in a town that never forgot anything. Sunday morning arrived without the familiar routine of Jennifer's departure for her fake visit to Alice. Instead, I slept late, made a large breakfast, and spent the day working on home improvement projects that had been neglected during the weeks of investigation and revelation. The steady rhythm of work felt restorative. The bathroom renovation was finally completed, with new tiles, fresh grout, and fixtures that matched Jennifer's original vision for the space. It felt appropriate to finish a project we'd started together, even though she wouldn't be there to see the final results. Completion, I realized, didn't always require an audience. That evening, I sat on my front porch with a beer, watching the sun set over Millbrook and reflecting on the events of the past month. The betrayal had been devastating, but the truth had also been liberating. I was free from the lies and deception that had been poisoning my marriage for 18 months, free to sit with my own thoughts without questioning their validity. Tom and Jennifer had destroyed 2 families with their selfish choices, but they'd also freed me from a relationship built on dishonesty and manipulation. The divorce would be finalized soon, and I could begin building a new life based on truth rather than elaborate fiction. A quieter life, perhaps, but a real one. The phone rang around 8 o'clock. Another call from Tom, probably making another attempt at reconciliation or apology. I let it go to voicemail and finished my beer, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight I was content to sit in the peaceful quiet of my reclaimed life, finally free from the Sunday pattern of lies that had defined my marriage for far too long. The truth had cost me a wife and a brother, but it had given me back my self-respect and my future. That seemed like a fair trade.